So, how can you do it legally? How can you make it happen for you? Well, of course, there's the main visa options that most people follow. And then there's a few loopholes that maybe you can utilize to your advantage while you work through other ways. Hi there. I'm Miss Dawn Godlewski, an American girl who called the cornfields of Illinois home until over 10 years ago when I started navigating the chaos of life overseas. If you've ever felt that itch for something more, that whisper telling you to break free from the ordinary, you're in the right place. This podcast is your backstage pass to the wild ride of moving abroad. I'm here to pull back the curtain on the real journey, sharing stories that are funny, dramatic, and sometimes downright unbelievable. We'll explore the gritty details, from battling culture shock and navigating tricky visa processes to celebrating those small victories that make it all worth it. So whether you're daydreaming about a new life abroad or already in the thick of it, grab your passport and let's explore what it really means to live life beyond borders. Welcome to A Broadly Speaking. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to the A Broadly Speaking podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. If this is your first time, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. We're going back to the basics today and talking about visas. And I think it's really important that you can understand how to stay locally and legally without having to sell a kidney or marry a local. And let's talk today about how to do that. If you want to live abroad forever, or for even a short, let's say 3-year time, whatever that is for you, you can't just hope for the best or find some sexy local to marry, right? You need to try something that won't get you deported. And as we see happening in the US right now with ICE agents, people who arrive illegally can get deported. And even if you've created a life for yourself in the country, it is likely that at some point you would get caught. And then what, right? Then you may not ever be able to be back in that country again. And you could theoretically even lose your passport over it. So it's super, super important that you move abroad the right way. No, you can't just overstay your tourist visa and hope nobody notices. And no, living off under the table jobs isn't a long-term solution either when you're moving abroad. So how can you do it legally? How can you make it happen for you? Well, of course, there's the main visa options that most people follow. And then there's a few loopholes that maybe you can utilize to your advantage while you work through other ways. So the first one for you to consider if you're not following the traditional route, and we'll talk about the traditional route in a second, but if you're looking for, I can't find a job right now and I don't know how to move abroad, there's an opportunity to look for something called a freelancer or a self-employment visa. This is great for remote workers, so people who are working remotely from another country, someone who is a consultant or a small business owner. All of those can fall into the freelancer and self-employment visas. There are some countries that offer this, especially here in Europe. You can find places like Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, the Czech Republic. There's a number of countries that offer this freelance or self-employment visa. That being said, you do need proof of income in order to get that. So if you're, hoping to move abroad without a job, you'll have to show that you do have some sort of stable income, whether that's savings for you that you would be living off of temporarily, or that is actual money that you're bringing in every month from someone or somewhere in your small business or in your consultant business. You'll also need potentially to have a business registration locally in the country. That does cost money. I know, for example, here in Switzerland, you don't have to register as a small business until you exceed a certain threshold of income. So that may be something that you're able to get around at least for the first, let's say, 6 or 12 months where you don't have a registration of your business yet, but you will potentially need that in the country. And you may even need local clients, depending on the country that you're moving to, as well as what your local business is, right? So if you're selling digital products on the internet, maybe you don't need local clients. But if you're selling consulting services for example, then you may need to have at least one local client in the country. Last but not least, you'll need health insurance. Even in countries that have socialized medicine, until you start paying taxes, meaning having a real normal job in the country, for the first year, usually at least, you'll need to have private health insurance to cover you for your health care. That doesn't mean that you won't eventually qualify for socialized care or universal health care, but for the immediate future, that would be part of what you would have to consider. When you're looking at this type of visa, one of the things that you absolutely want to do is to make it look like you're an asset to their economy. How can you be useful to their economy with your small business or your freelancing self-employment, right? So again, this is not the same as a digital nomad visa. This is specifically for someone who owns a small business and wants to live abroad. Make sure when you're filling out your application that you're showing you're an asset and not some broke digital nomad trying to take up space in their cafes, because that's going to quickly get you denied on your visa. But if you do have a stable income from a small business, you could work as a consultant, like freelancing as a consultant, instead of, for example, if you're in business or you're in, I don't know, I work in pharmaceuticals as my full-time gig, let's say. And in that case, if I were trying to work and say, okay, I'm a freelancer and I have enough clients, that would help in that perspective as well. I mentioned the digital nomad visa. These are different than a freelance visa. So these are more working like remotely for another company in another country. So you can live there legally working for a different company, right? As a digital nomad, meaning that you don't have a traditional job in the country. You're working there for another company or another country job, right? There's a lot of countries today that offer a digital nomad visa. Some of them include, for example, Estonia or Croatia, Portugal, Spain. Greece is another one that has a really good digital nomad visa program. Argentina is another one if you're looking to stay in the Americas. There's lots of different places that offer this. It is not generally offered in the UK or Canada. So in the UK and Canada right now, offering digital nomad visas is not a thing. Generally speaking, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you have to go the more traditional route. So if you're looking for an English-speaking country as their primary language, the digital nomad and freelance visas are typically not available to you. Instead, you would go the more traditional route, which is what we'll talk about next. Related to digital nomad visas, you absolutely need a remote job because you'll need to prove income as part of your job, right? Or as part of your application. And in this case, the remote job can be, for example, if you work for an American company that allows you to work from home 100%, you're a remote worker, as they call it, and you have the opportunity to remote work from anywhere in the world. That's where this digital nomad visa comes in. You will, like I said, need proof of income. Usually that depends on the country, but you'll need between $2,000 and $4,000 a month of a proof of income, right? So as long as you're bringing in, that's your post-tax income. So that's the income that you get after taxes. You'll need to be able to prove that. Again, like the freelance visa, you'll probably need to show health insurance, at least for the first year. And that's not your American health insurance that you're bringing over. You'll actually need health insurance that covers you in foreign countries. There are opportunities, and I think I did a whole podcast on it, or I will do a whole podcast on whether you should get local insurance or global insurance, for example, but that will depend on the country that you're living in, the availability of private insurance, et cetera. But definitely you'll have some complications, let's say, if you don't have appropriate health insurance getting your visa. I will also say for digital nomads, one of the things to consider is you are getting paid potentially in your US dollar account. And you need to consider that there are foreign transaction fees if you have a local account. When you're considering how to bank, and we'll do another podcast on this too, but when you're considering how to manage your money, most US banks won't pay out, for example, in euros to Estonia, right? They're just not going to do that. So you'll need to consider whether or not you need to set up a local bank, and then you'll transfer money from the US, and consider that transfer fees are a thing as well. And you can lose money as well in foreign exchange. So when we're talking about $2,000 to $4,000 a month, you probably need a bit more than that in your income per month to live in a digital nomad world, because you'll need to be able to transfer money from the US to your local account in whatever country you choose. And there will be foreign transaction fees. So transferring money costs money, unfortunately. And in addition to that, there are fluctuations in the value of money, right? The US dollar versus the euro, the US dollar versus the Swiss franc, whatever that case may be, the Swiss franc versus the euro. Money, the value of money changes every day and literally every minute of every day. So it's a really big thing just to consider as you're working through your budgeting from a digital nomad visa. How much do you really have access to, and what would that look like? So just things to check. If you are planning to quote unquote work without actually having a job, they will find out. So they're going to look at things like your bank statements to make sure that you're paying, or that you have enough money to live. And in addition to that, when you go to renew your visa, they will ask for proof of income and proof of ability to pay, right? So if you're not doing that, you could get deported. So just to consider, don't try and fake it. And I know there's people all over the internet telling you, you can fake it, you can fake it. Don't. Just don't. Okay. Of course, there's the traditional route that you have. The classic route, of course, is for work visas and sponsorships. This is how we first moved abroad, was getting a work visa from a company that, in this case, my husband was the first one. He got a transfer to a company here in Switzerland, and we got a work visa, and it was a sponsored job, and it was super simple. This can be done via international companies. You can look on job shortage lists in countries. So for example, there's a shortage of IT professionals. There's a shortage of finance professionals. There's a shortage of medical professionals. So if you have any of these trainings, let's say, or if you're skilled in any of these things, you can move abroad. That being said, specifically for work visas and sponsorship, this is the typical way that you can get into Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, etc. You'll need to have a work sponsored visa in order to get in. That is challenging, as you can imagine, but I just want to call that out because it's not as simple as, yay, I just want to go work somewhere. Finding the job can be very, very challenging. And also it's rewarding, right? But you will need, for specifically for those countries, which a lot of people have asked me about, I just want to put that out there, that this is the route that you can get into Canada, that you can get into the UK, that you can get into Australia, New Zealand, etc. In the case of work visas, look for multinational companies that are willing to transfer employees, or apply for a work holiday visa if you're eligible. So this is something like where you can get something called a secondment. At least that's what we call it in my industry, but where you get a temporary assignment abroad, and then you can work for transitioning permanently later, and working on a permanent local contract later. But at least getting abroad, you can often do that with a work assignment. So it's just something to consider as you go. There's some places that are so desperate for workers right now that they'll practically beg you to stay. So that's something like Germany's IT sector right now, especially in Berlin. They have a lot of IT startups, and a lot of companies are looking for IT professionals and data and digital professionals. And oh my goodness, it's like handing out candy to a baby. So if you have the experience that they're looking for, it's absolutely possible to find a job. In Japan, as a great example, they are very desperate for nurses. Even if you don't speak Japanese, they need people so much that they will beg you to stay. The aging population is so big that they need people just boots on the ground, essentially. And this one is one way just to look around for roles. That's not to say those are the only two countries, but those are two countries that are definitely looking for that. The last major type of visa that's not student or marrying some sexy hot Italian guy is in-store or property owner visas. For most of us, that's well outside of our money abilities. So these are more the bougie people that can afford this. And so if this is you, congratulations. You can get a golden visa or a property-based residency visa. Portugal, for now, has this. Greece, Spain is going away from the golden visa, but they're working through it. Italy is another one. You can buy a property. You have to invest a certain amount of money in order to get it. Usually it's around 500,000 US dollars or so in order to qualify for the golden visa, but it is possible. Now, if none of those are your way, if none of those are like, yay, I can do it, there are a few other opportunities for you. These are less comfortable, let's say, they're less permanent, but they are something that you could look at. There are people who talk about the visa hop strategy, and there are some countries like Mexico, Georgia, Albania that allow indefinite back-to-back tourist visas. So you do qualify for tourist visas. That being said, theoretically, you're not allowed to work when you're there on a tourist visa. You'll need some sort of ability to have an income without having an income. So this one is not one that I would recommend for anyone who wants to work legally in a country. If you want to work in a country, you need to have a real work permit visa to allow you to work. What you are able to do, though, is you could theoretically go to, let's say, Albania, which is amazing. It's a beautiful country. You could go to Albania on a tourist visa, look for a job, and then get sponsorship for a permanent visa, right? So, like, there are ways to make it happen. But that, of course, requires a lot of gumption. I would say a lot of guts to do that. But if that's what you're looking for, if you're desperate to get out, that's an opportunity for you. You could live on a temporary visa, for example, on a visitor visa for a period of time. It is auto renewed for you potentially. And then while you're there, you can look for a real job. Another one is a volunteer visa. So you have work exchange programs that offer legal stays. So like cultural exchange programs, you can look for those. Again, these are typically volunteer, meaning unpaid visas, but oftentimes you can get these with housing included or things like that so that you're not living off of nothing, right? Or living off of savings that you don't have. You can get a volunteer visa. The other option is, of course, marriage, but not the scammy, sexy Italian kind. If you do end up marrying abroad, make sure you actually qualify for residency because not all spousal visas allow you for permanent residency. So make sure, like, if you fall in love and your partner is from another country and you want to escape, make sure that you get the right kind of visa so that you can do it. The truth is, moving abroad is complicated, right? And getting a visa can feel overwhelming, to say the very least, but you don't have to be rich, married, or a scam artist to stay abroad. You just need the appropriate strategy to do it. When you're thinking about making the move, and I can see if I can link this in the show notes for you, I did a whole episode on how to choose where to live abroad. When you're researching those places, like you've made your list and now you're like, cool, I'm going to move. Make sure that you understand what your visa options are. Make sure you check the eligibility, especially if you have kids. How do you bring your children over with you or your elderly parent, for example? And then you can take the first step towards actually moving. If you want a real plan and not just a cool Pinterest board, I do have a program that will help you through this whole process. It's a mini course that I have related to visas that helps you through every single step of the visa process, including how to choose where you want to live, what kind of visas are eligible for you, what you need for documentation, how to get there, all those sorts of things. It is my research and register program. I invite you, if you really, really want to get all the details about how to make this happen for you, feel free to DM me on Instagram. Just DM me research and I will know exactly what you're talking about. And we can talk through the process of getting you enrolled in the program and really help you through all of the steps of the visa program and really get you to the point where you're ready to roll and you're ready to pack your bags and go across the ocean or wherever it is that you're going. All right, my friend, that is it for this episode. I hope this was useful for you, talking about the different visa types so that you know which ones maybe you can start looking into for the country that you're interested in going to. As always, if you have questions, if you want more information, DM me over at Instagram at I am Mistel. I am happy to have a chat in my DMs with you about anything related to moving abroad, whether it's visas or something else. Feel free, just shoot me a message and I will be happy to chat. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, my friend. I am looking forward to seeing you move yourself abroad. And I look forward to hearing from you if you're interested in that research and register module. You get access right away and you can already start your process. We talk about what country you're going to move to, and I help you with your review and make sure that everything looks good for you. So that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Share this with a friend who is thinking about moving abroad, whatever that takes. I will see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to Broadly Speaking. If today's episode got you dreaming a little bigger or thinking a little braver, go ahead and hit subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who's ready for their own adventure. And hey, don't be a stranger. Come hang out with me over on Instagram at @IamEstelle for the real, unfiltered life abroad. Keep that passport handy, and remember, life's too short to stay in one place.